what are the complexities? And I want you to pinpoint this, please. What are the complexities around standard accents ideology in terms of the quality of lesson delivery and student engagement? What are the complexities around this? Because you've mentioned that it does exist right from kindergarten, really. Children are taught how to read, how to write. So their mindset are being structured to talk in a certain way and act in a certain way. So can you elaborate more on the complexities around standard language or accent ideology, if you like, in terms of the quality of lesson delivery and student engagement?
Well, I think this is an area in which technology has really leveled some of the playing field. We see this a lot with visiting students who are Erasmus students from other European universities who are in UCD for a semester or for one academic year. Their experiences oftentimes are of, while they have a high level of English, they may not be as exposed to non-learner varieties, so people who use English as a mother tongue. And UCD is a university where an awful lot of our staff is either Irish or American or Canadian. UCD prides itself on having 30% of its workforce from outside of Ireland, but Ireland itself is an English dominant country. So anybody coming to work in UCD certainly would have to have English as one of their primary languages. And so they conduct lectures exclusively in English, except in the School of Irish, where they're done through the Irish language. And so, so the teaching staff all have to be able to deliver lectures in English. I've heard very few complaints from students that they can't understand a lecturer. Either they can't understand what they're saying in class or they can't understand their written communication. So I don't think there's as much of a problem there. But when I say technology is helping to bridge this gap, is with recorded lectures, students can go back and listen to things, repeatedly and say, oh, I didn't catch that actually. I want to go back and listen to it again, make sure my notes are correct, or make sure I've understood this concept correctly. And with digital lectures, it actually becomes a lot easier to go back and check your record. To be the one student in a lecture hall of 120 who puts their hand up and says, can you repeat that? I didn't understand it. It actually takes quite a lot. And this is something I've noticed from my upbringing in America to working here, is that American students are probably a lot more likely to ask questions and to stop a lecturer, where in Ireland, again, this is my own experience and from talking to other lecturers, the Irish students are much less likely to stop someone and say, I didn't understand that. Can you please repeat it? Can you explain it again? Explain it a different way. So visiting students see this as, the gospel coming down to you, and are less likely to stop lecturers as well. So it used to be, and hopefully it will be again, that at the end of the lecture, somebody might come down to you and say, oh, could you explain that to me again? Which is fine. We're all happy to do it. But there's less personal contact in this new age of delivering lessons digitally. But it's more sort of, the student can lead their learning a lot more efficiently, maybe. but that being said, I know very few instances where there was a communication breakdown completely between a student and a member of the teaching staff, because a lot of times we have to negotiate coming from different places. So the visiting students from America might be more likely to say to me, "Oh, could you explain that to me?" Or someone visiting from France might be more likely to ask one of my French colleagues, "Oh, could you, they might even code switch. They might, go to speak to them in French, which is great. It's good to match your students' needs in that way. But from a perspective of institutional accent ideology, it gets a bit dicey because the universities in Ireland aren't great about acknowledging linguistic diversity. So if we don't do linguistic diversity well, if we don't do multilingualism very well, we're probably not doing polydialectalism very well either. So we're not necessarily accommodating to students who come from different backgrounds than us. Now that's the university as a whole. A colleague of mine and I carried out a survey of UCD and language use, and just amongst the staff, there are 68 different languages being used on a daily basis. So there's incredible linguistic diversity there, but you won't find that in any marketing material from the university, even though they could use it very much to their advantage. You don't really see that in the public display of language. Everything in UCD is written in English with an Irish translation, with the exception of the Confucius Institute, where we have English, Irish, and Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. So it's like trying to build a bookcase with no instructions. We know there's plenty of wood, there's lots of nails, screws, but it's up to us to figure out how it all fits together. And we don't always get the support from the upper reaches to address cultural background differences, nor is there much cause for, and this is the idea of the neoliberal university, there's no cause to accommodate to people in an English medium of instruction university because, well, hey, hell, we all have English, right? In order to come here and study, you have to have English, so we just do everything through English. And if you don't sound like you were born in a lecture hall, good luck to you.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for that, Dr. Lucek. The final question is, does your accent prevent you from accessing quality education? I know you've touched a little bit on this, but I want you to elaborate more. Does it actually prevent you from accessing quality higher education? And if that is the case, how can this anomaly be corrected?
The universities that I have known in Ireland all have a program, a special program for students who are from socially disadvantaged areas. So it's called the Access Program in UCD. In Trinity, it's the Foundation Program. Basically, it helps students by giving them advice on writing. So there's a writing center. There are introductions to university life, because for students who don't have a history of third level education in the family, they might be the first person to go to a university. It can be a culture shock for sure, but it's also something that marks them in their home communities too. So they're the person who's gone to university. They're the person who are doing this other thing. And so universities do try to bridge that gap and to make students feel a little bit more okay being in a place where they don't necessarily hear their own voice. And there are widening participation subgroups. So trying to bring more students who wouldn't traditionally go to university into the fold, to better their chances in life and better their economic, their social, their their holistic experience of the rest of their lives. So universities do try to do that, and I'm sure they're very, very successful. I don't have access right now to the reports. They do produce reports every year, and they're making progress all the time towards including more people from different backgrounds. In order to get to university, though, in order to access that level, is where I'm finding the problems. And maybe that's just because I'm working with secondary school students. They know from a very young age sometimes that they're either going to face a very difficult transition to third level, or they're just not going to go at all. I asked a couple of the schools that I was working with in very socially disadvantaged areas, economically disadvantaged areas, if they would be interested in coming to UCD to participate in an open day, or to come along and attend some classes, do a campus tour, these sorts of things that we do all the time. And a lot of them said, like, oh, I don't think, like, we don't have any students who are going to be applying to university, so there's no point in bringing them over there and showing them something that they'll never have. So when an educator who's around these young people every day, and they are still children, they're 14, 15 years old, when somebody who has a duty of care to them has this notion that they have to protect them from this thing that they can't have, well, then they're becoming a passive player, if not an active player, in limiting these young people's chances of attaining the life that they want for themselves. If I was told at 14 years old that the way I spoke was going to stop me from getting ahead in life, and either I would have to use a historical example, convert or face the sword, I have no idea how I would react to that. I mean, this is how I have to acknowledge my own privilege, which is quite significant as a white man from the United States who grew up in a middle-class household. I never had to face that. And I think it's absolutely dreadful that anybody does. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm the first person to discover this problem. I'm not the first person. I'm not the first person this week to discover that there's a problem. But I think what people like me need to do is to not just acknowledge the problem, but to actively work towards fixing it. And this is an echo of what needs to be done in the anti-racist movement. We need to be anti-class. We need to be anti-race. We need to be anti-stopping progression in life. Because it's all well and good to stop someone from doing what they want to do in order for you to get ahead. But eventually, if you partake in that system, eventually you or somebody who's close to you is going to be the person who's stopped. And there's no amount of insulating, there's no amount of money you can accumulate that'll eventually stop your people from facing some sort of discrimination. So we all have to be active players in this, and we have to have support from the top.
Thank you, Dr. Lucek, for coming to the #PortRaccent interview and for providing such deep, valuable insights to the topic today. And on that note, I'll bring this interview to an end. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Thank you very much for having me.